Number one, do not mix self-storage with flex. Buyer pools are much different. Flex guys don't like storage. Your big storage guys don't like flex. You've got a lot of self-storage guys that will build flex onto their property just because, they're familiar with the build. They understand it. And they say, hey, cash flow is great, but the problem is that you restrict your buyer pool so much. And this is proven. We've seen these things sell for $40, $50 a foot less than the property next door just because it has that component, and you have to find that hybrid buyer because now you're trying to buy this facility over here and it's got storage on it. It's now a different management operation. It's different counting. It's completely different.
Okay, Cody, we're back on.
Welcome back.
I know, man. Like I said earlier, I feel like we're getting a groove, man.
I enjoy it. All these segments we've done, I enjoy talking about. Something that me and the guys continuously just try to update and upgrade. And what we're hitting today is also some more fun stuff, some key items. So yeah, I'm excited to get into it.
I know. The show is Invest in Flex Space, baby.
Invest in Flex Space.
Invest. It's such a great asset. Really thrilled that our company has jumped in with both feet. We contract a new site, by the way. Oh, we got to do the deal of the episode. We need to make that part of it, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. This is kind of going on a leg and doing it in the spare of the moment.
Okay.
But we did contract some lots in Fort Worth, right off of Ray Street and
nice.
121. Actually, I think I sent it to you.
Yeah, not too far from where you live.
So I think that's going to be a great track for some flex space.
I think so.
Flex-ish.
And I love all the nice new multifamily that's popping up over there. I think with, downtown not being as vibrant, the Stockyards continues to expand and do really well. And I think that area is next because, as you see, just nice high-end multifamily continues to be built out there. Tran, he bought a nice little townhome over there as well. They're building those too. So it's good quality stuff over there, and that's what I like about it.
I love Tran. Yeah. Every now and then I'll give him a honk.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for a pie or something, a good neighborly pie.
Oh, yeah, you won't get that.
Okay. But yeah, so we're really excited about that lot. It's a corner lot too, so
nice.
It's got good access on two sides, obviously, so we can play around, move our buildings where we need to. We're actually even running some pre-marketing on it to kind of see what interests we have, and it's feeling amazing.
Okay, nice.
So
maybe what kind of model are you going to do there?
Mainly retail, a very retail focused with a small component of storage.
Okay.
Just because of the particular zoning doesn't necessarily allow us kind of the full-blown light industrial or industrial period. So we're working kind of around some of that, but the concept is still very similar to regular industrial flex space.
Okay. So it'll be kind of showroom-esque with some retail, so you can kind of get any of those hybrid guys from maybe a gym to a coffee shop kind of thing. Is that what you're thinking?
That's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
So I guess that's why I say flex-ish, without the warehouse.
Flex.
Yeah, without the warehouse. But it has storage. So we're kind of playing around with the building. This is what I love about this industry is that word flex is going to be overused for sure. It's beautiful because it allows you to pivot and use a site to its full maximum potential. The type of materials we use in the flex space.
Allows a tenant to also utilize it to their maximum potential as well.
Yeah.
Because you're building it not for somebody specific, but for it to have that flexibility.
That's right. That's right. Actually, speaking of gym, we had a trainer reach out to us.
Oh, nice.
Looked at his brand. Really cool gym. Looks like he's got a great fan base. We had car dealer. Obviously, that won't work.
Yeah.
Didn't call him back. And then the other thing was, I believe it was an antique shop. Again, probably not our perfect potential client, but we'll see. But the gym is certainly interesting. And we just started pre-marketing just like literally a couple of days ago. And we already have 3 potential tenants, right?
Oh,
2 that
perfect.
actually might work. So that's incredible. Maybe we'll talk about pre-leasing, pre-marketing at some point. But,
it's a good way to evaluate a site early
right.
on. But yeah, the car guys, those guys are always there, it seems like, no matter where you put a building. Car guys, mechanics, body shops. Mm-hmm. They're always looking to lease it up. We were at a facility out there in Kennedale, and that owner said, I only lease to automotive guys. And we could tell because we couldn't even get into the parking lot. It was
just slipping on oil.
Oh, just tow truck heaven out there. It was crazy. But, they're all renting. They pay high dollar rents and whatnot. And we'll get into it later. But, there's a pretty good sized buyer pool that if it's got car tenants, they won't even buy it. 100%. Sometimes on who you're listening to will restrain you on the sale side. So that's one thing to always keep in mind.
I kind of feel like if you have a park and you start leasing to a couple of car repair shops or dealerships, just go all the way in. Just give it to
It's a
Give them the
slippery
whole
slope,
park.
man.
Yeah.
It's a slippery slope
Give them the whole
because
park.
they'll start expanding. They'll start needing more car spaces. They'll start
That's
needing
right.
this and that. Just go ahead and just surrender to them. Just accept your fate as the car leasing guy. Yeah.
That's right. All the environmental issues. And,
Yeah. Just
oh my God.
buy extra panels because they're going to run into it. Just, get everything you need to keep the facility moving. But there's a place for everyone. Car guys can be great tenants as long as what we tell people is make sure you're going to lease to a car guy. Go look at their current facility, where they're at, right? You want to see the cleanliness. You want to see kind of how they operate. And then, also always put in restrictions with these guys because a lot of times they'll push and push and push.
That's right.
On, bringing more cars or this
Right.
or that. And so you want to outline everything. And it's not just them, just with any tenant that you think you could run into something in the future, especially if it's a parking issue. You want to make sure and tackle that at the front end because it's very rare that people do is what's funny. Yeah, those are the guys that can clog up a parking lot pretty quick and, dirty up the place. And
Yeah.
sometimes they can be rougher on the facility as well. And
Yeah.
so, you want to make sure that you're not just satisfying that one tenant, but the entire park.
That's right. It's good stuff, man.
And we're already getting into the don'ts of Flex Industrial.
That's right. Today's topic is what, Cody?
The don'ts
don'ts.
of Flex Industrial. And I made a sweet list here. I got 16 points. We'll breeze through them pretty quick. But basically, these are points that we see when people are either building a park, investing, operating. We see things that when these happen, we see how it can actually affect either the park's value, its operations, its leasability, whatever it has. And so you just kind of know. I thought it'd be good to go over some of them, try to help out on what we see when we're trying to sell facilities or help people evaluate them or get them built. These are things that we always keep in the back of our mind. And I went through the guys and I said, hey guys, I want a list of all the don'ts. So we just sat there, wrote them all down. As I was driving over here, they were texting me more and more. And I said, no, we're out. We got our 16. We're done. So number one, and I know we've said this before, and I'm telling you, people just keep doing this all over the U.S. Do not mix self-storage with Flex. The buyer pools are much different. Flex guys don't like storage. Storage guys really, your big storage guys don't like Flex. But you've got a lot of self-storage guys that will build Flex onto their property just because, they're familiar with the build. They understand it. And they say, hey, cash flow is great. But the problem is you restrict your buyer pool so much. And this is proven. We've seen these things sell for $40, $50 a foot less than the property next door just because it has that component and you have to find that hybrid buyer because now if you're trying to buy this facility over here and it's got storage on it, it's now a different management operation. It's different counting. It's completely different. And so the marketing for self-storage is significantly different than Flex. And there's just a lot to it. And so it's very surprising to me that people continue to do it. And then when they look to sell it, then they realize maybe I should have designed it differently to where I could have parceled it off, sold the storage to a storage investment group. Because you got to keep in mind, storage is heavy institutional now too.
Yeah, it is.
And Flex is on its way there, but just not as far along as storage is. And so if you want to do both, great. I think they could bounce well off of each other as long as they're separately parceled.
To all you creative guys out there, these guys sit around the table and go, man, let me just make some flex space with some storage. I bet you this won't just
That's
sell off
right.
the shelf.
I'm gonna put some trailer parking out front too. These puppies are gonna fly.
Right.
Because now the Flex guys can lease the storage.
Right.
And now I got built-in storage leasers, and then the storage guy can go get something. I'm telling you.
Talk to Cody before you do it.
when we get a storage facility with Flex, we love selling them. There's no issues with it. We got to tell people, hey, your buyer pool is just not as strong and it's not as large. It's a different model, I believe, and so it does work. And I see them all the time. Cash flow very, very well.
Okay.
So if you're just like, hey, I'm gonna build this for long-term cash flow, and not really looking at it on the exit, hey, by all means. But if you can parcel it off, do it. Another thing, and I know you know this because you've been in some of these classes with some of these guys, some of the guys that are in it. Don't overlook zoning and permitting when buying land.
Yes.
Okay.
That's a big one.
So many people, a couple of those guys that have reached out to us, say, hey, we bought this piece of land. It was zoned medical office. We thought we could get it rezoned to Flex. We can't. Can you help us sell it? And we don't sell medical office land. And so now they are stuck with a piece of land that they can't do anything on. Or, buying a piece of land and finding there are certain restrictions that really only a civil engineer could have maybe uncovered or somebody doing a little bit more due diligence. And so really dig into, even if you're in the county, you want to dig into it. You want to make sure gas easements, people have run into the airway easements where it's too close to an airport and you got to be at a certain height.
That's a big one.
Yeah, people have run into so many things.
I think we know mutual guy about.
Oh yeah. Those are some things that some people just don't think of, right? And you don't realize, even though you're buying the land and it's yours, these things have restrictions on them.
Guys, there's a reason it's cheap.
There is a reason it's cheap.
Man, I just found this deal, man. right near the airport. You won't believe it. You can just track your plane and unload your equipment.
You know what's funny? I bought a Mustang a long time ago, and it was cheap.
Yeah.
It broke down the entire way home, and I found out why it was so cheap. That thing was overheating. I mean, it had all sorts
We've
of
all
problems.
learned that lesson.
Yeah. And as I was giving him the cash, I was sitting there like, I just got a deal. And as I drove off, I think he said the same thing. He was like, what a sucker.
Yeah, he's just laughing all the way to the bank.
As my tailpipe dragging out of the driveway, yeah. It was bad. If it's cheap, the one percenters will get that.
If it's 25 cents a foot.
Yeah, you may want to invest 25 cents a foot in research at least. Here's another one. So condos are getting big.
The reason I'm laughing so hard, guys, is because I've done it.
Did you buy something too cheap?
This is years ago. Houses probably, but so I'm not laughing at y'all. I'm laughing with y'all.
I've done the same. I mean, trust me. I mean, yeah, we all see a clearance tag every now and then and get ripped off. So I believe it. So next point, condos, those are getting big, right?
Yeah,
a lot of people want to get into luxury
That's
condos,
right.
storage condos, car condos. Don't build condos in a heavy home renter market. You got to tailor those to your audience. So be very careful where you build condos, because now you're requiring people not to lease, but to come in and purchase. And purchasing power is not easy for everyone. And so there's some places where leasing is significantly better than a condo. And we've seen condos get built in areas and struggle to sell out. Be very cautious on that. And that's one stat that we've kind of noticed on condos that struggle to sell, is they're in an area that has too many home renters. It's just what can service the area.
Those folks, unfortunately, are not driving Ferraris and RVs.
Not all, unless you're in Addison, and you make $30,000 a year, then you do. That's what they did back then. Okay, don't ignore tenant needs and area demand when building. So even though you got your model in mind and you know what you want to build, you find this site, you want to do your research out there and make sure that your model works for that area. We see models get built in areas, just like you said, on one of yours, you're building it, even though you got some city restrictions, but you're also tailoring it more towards the area because you got that nice corner and whatnot. So you don't, even if you could, you don't want to put something basic there that is just going to maybe be an efficient build or not get the rents that you really truly could capitalize on. Or if your area is, highly competitive and maybe you need to amenitize yourself or something, understand the area and demand when building. Because the demand is the other key, right? Yep. It's very easy to understand area demand, and people will go into markets going, hey, I think this is the next growing market. Well, sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. And the last thing you want to do is be years and years ahead of a growing market. Kind of understand that. One thing we were talking about earlier, obviously, these things take them with a grain of salt, but because not everyone is deal by deal specific, but I'm a big believer in frontage. I've always talked about that. Yeah. I say do not sell off your frontage, okay? If you got good frontage, and I can't tell you how many people will buy a parcel, look to carve up the front and sell that off to somebody to, maybe make some relief cash or something to help them build or something of that nature. I'm a big believer on frontage. I believe it's no different than at a car show. Your frontage is your paint job. Your paint job wins car shows. Okay. We're big believers in that. The only time that we see people selling off frontage that maybe blocks your facility, if it's like something really good coming in, like a Chick-fil-A or something like that, sometimes those can make sense, but that's going to be very, very rare. Do not skimp on parking ever. That's going to be one of your biggest amenities, one of your biggest problems that you'll run into. Every facility we're selling right now, not everyone, but most of them have parking issues. Yeah. Talked to a guy on my way here. He said he's doing one space per tenant. Ooh. Tell him you're going to regret it. Unless all your tenants are Ubering in, you're going to have a problem.
That's like having very low expectations of those businesses.
Yeah, it is.
We don't expect you to grow. We don't expect you to hire an employee, and we don't really expect you to have any clients.
We don't expect you to have a customer, and we expect at least half of y'all to carpool here. And that's why I told him. I said, look, unless all these guys are carpooling, you're going to have some problems.
Is there at least a bus station nearby?
No, there generally isn't with flex on the outskirts. Do not be overly optimistic with projections, especially if you have investors that you're paying money back to.
That's a good one,
Okay,
guys.
be realistic, because people run into that stuff all the time, and it's very easy to go, okay, the market rate today is X, but I believe when I'm done, it's going to be significantly higher. So I'm going to go ahead and place it here because that's what my investors want to see.
Yeah.
They don't want to see the today. No, you want to be as realistic as possible because nobody wants to have conversations with somebody on their returns not being what they initially thought they were going to be. So, because we see projections all the time where they'll come in and the expenses will be nothing. And we're like, man, it may run that now, your first year maybe, but you got to account for these things, these expenses moving up pretty quickly because you got to keep in mind when you buy raw land and you build, you're going to be paying that raw land tax for a while, right? So it's going to be real low. Lo and behold, you could be a year, 2 years down the road and you were at 20 cents a foot. Now you're at $2 a foot. If you're triple net, what that does is that could eat into your base rent cost because now you're having to lower your base rent, which is your profit, to account for that triple net cost that ran a little high on you. Or in some cases, people convert these back to gross leases, which has happened in several markets as well. Understand projections, understand what you're paying out to the investors, make sure you can do it, and make sure everybody's comfortable and understanding with what they're doing. Do not underestimate the competition. Okay, know your competitors, and if you even want to be near them, because you and I were talking the other day about some cities down south below Fort Worth, down 35, that Rendon Crowley area. There's a couple people down there that are good owners.
Oh,
geez. They've been down there a long time.
Yeah.
They'll build brand new, nice construction. They'll do $8, $9, $10 gross. Ugh. That's very tough to compete with. You'd be surprised how many people go into those markets thinking, oh man, I'll get 12 triple net. I'll add a little bit more glass or something like that. The problem is in markets like that, those tenants, that's all they can afford. That's why that number's there. And so know your competitors, understand the competition. And look, if there's competition, in some cases, that's perfectly fine. You want to figure out how to differentiate yourself from those guys. And so be different. Don't be like everyone else. Be different. Don't disregard tenant mix. Okay. You want to be very cautious on that. Your tenant mix is going to help you maintain a happy tenant. Going to help you lease it more. You start adding car guys like we were talking earlier. You start adding too many car guys. They clog up parking. They're fighting with tenants. We were selling a facility up north, and every time I walked it, because some of the tenants were coming out, hey, are you the manager? These guys keep parking over here, this or that. And it's like, man, they didn't like that I parked in the handicap spot either, but my leg was hurting that day. No, I was kidding. But
I had a question about that, actually. I want to dig into that a little bit.
Okay.
Are there type of tenants that tend to cause issues with other tenants? Like, in my mind, again, we're not picking on you car dealers and car repairmen because we need y'all. But
I'm a car guy. I mean,
every warehouse, industrial park, small bay park I've been to where I've seen car repair dudes or body shops or whatever, they tend to be somewhat a nuisance a little bit.
They can be.
They've got cars parked in certain areas. They're pulling out cars and temporarily parking them maybe somewhere where they're not supposed to, where they're kind of blocking the driveway and all that things. In my mind, car-related tenants tend to be an issue. Is that true? Are there any other type of tenants that we should kind of think about?
So car tenants, I would say are probably number one that do create the parking issues and things of that nature. Another issue that they create that we just ran into on a deal, one of them had a couple cars parked out front, and one of them was a body shop, and the car was wrecked, and we were selling the facility, and that was a day that I was there to walk it with an environmentalist, and at that point, as we were walking it, one of those wrecked cars that they had in there was actively leaking antifreeze onto the ground. Of course, that environmentalists went, photo crazy on it. And
talking about failing your phase one.
I know, right? And so just by that, it caused for a phase two. If that car wouldn't have been there, we would have had a phase two. And so cost for phase two. So now the buyer's spending an extra $20,000 and
oh my Lord,
making the deal a little more complex. And so all because somebody had to wreck their Chrysler 300 in the front and drag it in there that morning. And so
it was a Chrysler or a Nissan? The Nissan Altimas, man.
Yeah, oh God, Nissan Altimas. They're the ultimate cars that are wrecked for some reason. Other ones that do are going to be sometimes places that sometimes hold events. We've seen, event centers or certain workout places that will at certain times bring in a bunch of people. And so if you've got a tenant that has a lot of people coming in, you want to know what their max amount of cars are going to be. Because, if they're a gym, they got to make money. They can only park so many cars there.
That's right.
They're going to have a problem with supporting their business. So you want to get all that stuff sorted out. So those guys can also clog up some issues and create some problems too.
Speaking of event space, so we've got a deal that we're working on in Fort Worth that we're going to repurpose, and we're considering doing event space. So in my mind, some of the things we already talked about, just kind of planning, because we're going to potentially office there as well, and we're building another office on the side as well, is to have a timeline. So we basically want to commit the event space Friday through Sunday. And so that our tenants, our other office tenants, including ourselves, know that, hey, Monday through Thursday, we're not going to have any parking issue or traffic issues. It's going to be smooth sailing, right? But then Friday through Sunday, there's a possibility that there's going to be bookings and we're going to have more traffic and parking might get a little bit harder. So I think maybe a good plan for some potential owners when you're putting together your flex space in a event center's interest set is to get a time schedule, I think, created with them because they're going to be pretty quiet during, I think, the midweek anyways.
Yeah.
But I think if you kind of concrete that and say, hey, these are your time slots where you can have events where you're not disrupting too much flow in this park, maybe that's a way to do it, huh?
Yeah, and so those are things that you organize with the tenants up front, so they're not signing a lease and then you're having to figure it out afterwards.
That's right.
It's no different. Gyms are getting really big into flex space. They can be phenomenal tenants, good long-term payers. Gyms, for the most part, when they go to a location, they're successful. A lot of times they stay there. They can be really good to have, but they can also clog it up as well. There's a gym out there in Weatherford, not too far from me, that is in a beautiful flex space, but I drive by it all the time, and, their mornings, they've got 20, 30 cars, and you see, people walking from a distance, parking in front of someone else's space, walking to go into the gym. And so it's setting and understanding the expectations with the tenants, and making sure that the flexibility that you're offering is flexible for them, because the last thing you want to do is hinder a tenant's ability to make money.
Yeah, and that's really hard to do when you only have one parking spot.
I know, right? So you're gonna be busting those guys in too. Don't underestimate the importance of curb appeal, right? Right when you drive in, even if you're off the beaten path, don't matter. Whenever you drive in, you want it to look good, you want it to feel good, you want it to feel professional, you want it to feel upkept, you want it to be a good looking facility, especially when you drive in. So some of you just drive in and you're just like pulling right up there. And there's just always little things that you can do to make it a little more curb appeal. Do not hinder your building from easy tenant expansion, right? That's what makes these things flexible. And so if you're building your park and you're setting your restrooms like dead center, which we see all the time, or at the back, but on offsetting walls. So now if you got to move this wall over for this guy to get an extra 1,000 feet, now this guy doesn't have a bathroom. And so you want to make sure that when you're building it to its most flexible design. And so that's why I like the 2,000 square feet. If you set the bathrooms the right way, you can maybe give this guy 3,000 and kind of go that way, or you can go 2, 4, 6, and so you want to set up the building the right way. If you've got a new build, maybe just build out one space and make it to where, all your plumbing is set in for if you need to build that space out, or if this guy's going to expand and maybe you're not going to add it, then you can cap it. Don't just go start throwing up mezzanines everywhere and things of that nature. Make sure you're separately metered on all of them, because tenants all the time will pay multiple meters. There's usually not an issue there, but set it up to be its most flexible, not just on the inside, but on the drive up as well. And so you want to set that up. That's what makes it flexible.
That was a nugget.
Don't get emotional about the process. It needs to make sense. Somebody told me a long time ago, if it makes sense, it makes dollars. If it makes dollars, it makes sense. So you find a piece of land, just like we were talking about, if it's too cheap, man, you get emotional. You're like, hey, I don't care if there's a pond in the center. We'll build on this thing. Don't get emotional about the process. Investment real estate should be that. It should be investment, not emotional. Leave that to the realtors and the home sales. Don't overcomplicate the design and building, right? And so, but that's something you always do early on, right? And so just like what you did, right? You knew what you wanted to build. You didn't go find an area and then try to tailor it to it. You knew what you wanted to build, so then you knew what areas you could go to and get it done.
That's right.
So don't overcomplicate it. It's metal buildings. Another thing too, what a lot of people don't realize, and you get with a metal builder and you're kind of doing your site layout and you're like, all right, I need these buildings to be like 53 feet wide and 76 feet long. Well, what you don't realize is sometimes when you're stretching over into those odd numbers, it can really start to ramp up that pricing. That's why so many are built that are 40 feet deep, 50 feet deep, 60 feet deep. When you start going over that, then, you start upgrading columns, you start upgrading steel. Don't overcomplicate it on the design and building. Don't overpromise investors. It's the same thing with projections. I can't tell you how many times we go into little investor meetings and people have been overpromised, which everybody knows that.
That's a common problem.
It's a common problem though.
It's a epidemic right now though.
You hear with all these LP investors that are not getting any of their money because they all thought, oh, I'm supposed to be getting 18 IRR or I'm supposed to be getting 8% return on my money.
Negative 18.
They're getting nada, or they're getting an email saying, hey, we appreciate our valued customers. We would love another $100,000 from you. Or
are you stupid enough to give me another 100,000?
Exactly. Where do I sign? Or you've got companies that I think we talked about before that actually lost some buildings in foreclosure.
Yeah.
An investor that was with them got an email saying, hey, sorry, all your money's wiped out. Then literally, I think he said like 10, 15 minutes later, he got another email saying, hey, we got a great opportunity over here that we just uncovered.
That is cold,
looking
man.
for LPs.
The arrogance, though, isn't it?
They're a big company, and and that's what happens. But it doesn't. It's something that's going on quite a bit. And I know I send you stuff every now and then of little news articles or emails or something not that people are kind of struggling or whatnot that and I know. And you're right, it's a big issue right now, and most of it is because of debt. Not all the cause, but a big main cause of it is the stuff that they financed 5 years ago. What was that interest rate, right? 3.75%, 4%, whatever it was. Now they're coming back to the table, and now they're at 7.5%, and maybe their rent projections where they thought they were going to be, maybe their capital cost, because that's another thing that happened too is, inflation kind of ran rapid. And so maybe if they had certain capital items that they were going to do, that maybe cost a lot more. And then you got your unforeseen issues. Big thing is reserves. A lot of people don't realize that. And so if I'm an LP and I'm going to invest in a deal, the number one thing that I want to ask, just, not just on everything else in the deal, but you want to know what those reserves they're going to hold in those accounts are, so that if things do get bad, they have money and they're not coming to me immediately. And nobody really ever asks that. And even if you're building, right, like you're building this for you, right, you're building these facilities for you, you want to have a reserve account as well. That way, if you have a tenant leave and you need some money, you're not going to pull it from anywhere else. You've already got that account that stays built. If you're doing a small facility, keep $10,000, $15,000 in there. That way, if you got to replace an HVAC or refinish out a space, you pull it out of there. And then as your income comes in over the next month or so, you replenish that, and you always keep that full. And so I'm a big fan of holding a reserve account on these, but you'd be surprised how very little some of these syndicators keep, just because they're just so reliant on the cash flow. I
want to actually make a recommendation here.
Yeah.
I think we should certainly do an episode, by the way, on syndications.
Yeah.
Do a whole just podcast on it, because I think that is so timely right now in this current climate where a lot of multifamily is getting destroyed, and LPs are in office and really across the board, a lot of real estate. Okay. Exceptions may be flex space, but you get the wrong syndicator or wrong developer, it's the same issue. But I think one of the nuggets I want to just throw in on this episode real quick is that when you're looking at investing with a GP, make sure that GP is heavily invested himself. Okay. Yeah. Either he's contributing, he's a developer / GP, or he is the GP plus he's got a couple of $100,000. Like if he's got 20 grand in it, folks, his commission alone on this deal is going to cover his 20, y'all. Yeah. Okay. He's got to put some skin in the game. And I think the best syndicators to me, and that's maybe my opinion, are the ones that are strategically involved in each deal. They're not just a professional syndicator, just kind of looking at portfolios of things to get into, but they're heavily invested in the idea, the game plan. They're part of the core team, and not just kind of coming from the outside going, hey, we can help you with funding, developer or investor, right? And we'll bring the money in, because they want to get all that money spent so that they can get their percentages, right?
Absolutely.
So I think the more involved the GP is, probably the better deal it's going to be.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And you'd be surprised how many of them don't. And, I'm not here to crap on GPs or anything like that, or syndicators, because there's a lot of really good ones out there.
Oh, 100%.
Any deal that we do, I've got a heavy amount of money in several of the ones that we have. And so, but yeah, you'd be surprised how many syndicators don't have much of anything in there, and they're just kind of rely on the cash flow. So you want to make sure, because also keep in mind, like these LP documents, a lot of the ones that I've seen, even ones that I've signed.
Yeah.
I mean,
I've signed them too.
They cover themselves very, very well. Mm-hmm. And so if you're not getting the return, or if something happens, I mean, you don't, in many cases, have a lot of liability that you can go back and get something figured out on. And so
it sure makes stock smell a little bit better, doesn't it?
It does, until you watch the stock market, here recently. And, now those aren't doing so good. But asking the right questions on those, make sure they got their money in it, understand their reserves, things of that nature are very key. Don't neglect exit strategies. I always love having an exit strategy on something. And then last but not least, don't be afraid to walk away. It's so hard to walk away,
bro.
It really can be, especially if you put a lot of time into it. You look at the deal and you start, going through it more and more. And that's what's happened to several of these new developers have gotten into it that call us and go, hey, we bought this land, and as we're looking at it more, I mean, it's just going to be too much money, and we can't pay the investors back fast enough and whatnot. So we think we should need to sell the land and just get what we can out of it. That's just not the right strategy to do. And so do your due diligence up front. If it smells funny, anything's funny about it, don't be afraid to walk away. That's right. Those are my 16 don'ts of Flex Industrial.
Bro, that was the bomb.
Yeah.
That was I love that. Amazing. I think the walk away thing is so important. I was talking to a young gentleman a week ago. I said, hey, one of the best traits you can have in real estate is to say no, right? Yeah. No, we're not doing that deal. Yeah, there's a little bit of money on this thing, but not enough if things go wrong, right? And so you've got to spread. You got to widen the distance between failure and, of course, like a slam dunk, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's really huge. And that's kind of what we do in this office, with Nate and Brandon. When we look at deals, like we're not barely trying to get the deal over the line. We're trying to go for home runs.
Yeah. You got to be more patient.
You got to be patient. Now, that doesn't mean we'll try a slim deal, but we do it with all the options and all the outs.
Yeah.
So that we don't lose a dime. Or if we lose something, it's just, nothing significant.
Yeah. For
example, story of Mansfield. I had that lot in Mansfield. I think I talked to you about it at one point. Commercially zoned, warehouses, all the good things about it, right? However, I will say this. The one thing we didn't really do was have a pre-development meeting, float to them our elevations and kind of our design, our concept, right? We just kind of checked the zoning, talked to them a little bit about what we're trying to do, but we didn't want to give them the full scope. However, this was the key. We bought it cheap. Not like cheap in a bad way, cheap in a good way. Okay. So our exit plan was, hey, if this doesn't work out, we bought it at such a great price that we knew we could totally pivot. And so guess what? The city, they don't really like our plan. Now, it didn't make sense to us. We had flex on both sides of the property, across the street, even a trailer park, but they just did a kind of a, trying to think of the term, but they basically are kind of doing a zoning change in that area, and they're wanting to go more residential.
Yeah.
And so that was something that I think that was voted in by the council members like this past year, beginning of the year. So they had different plans. However, we were good because we already had potentially anticipated that it may not work out for flex, but we were flexible and got the thing sold.
There you go.
we made like 30%.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, so you made out just fine on it, but yeah, like I said, I mean, we got so many people that are trying to sell land that flex land. It's not an abundant supply right now, but it's not as scarce as it once was either. And so I think there's a lot of people that thought they could get into it, and once they bought it, they realized, man, this may be a little more work than I want to do, or I got to raise more money than I thought. And so, yeah, you want to make sure that you're not afraid to walk away. That's one thing that I'm never afraid to do in commercial real estate. Because one thing I don't know if you know this, I invested in a lot of office buildings pre-COVID. And there were actually a couple that these guys were raising. I chose not to for whatever reasons, and those actually ended up going back to the bank, thankfully. And so, well, because the office is in a lot of trouble. COVID hit it hard, and as it was trying to recover, the economy started getting hit hard. Inflation hits office very hard because of the re-tenant finish out. The spaces that used to cost $10 a foot to refinish out are now $40 and $50, and the rental rate hasn't changed or has gone backwards. And so, yeah, make sure that you understand what you're getting into and not be afraid to walk away. But I got our last one. You want me to go over this one? The how to insulate your small bay flex park. As we start talking about a downturn, I feel like we've been in one for a while, but flex is still running strong. Just closed out another project the other day, put 2 more under, and man, we're rocking and rolling. But
I saw that on LinkedIn. What was the sales price for that?
That one was, I think, just a pinch under $150 a foot.
Nice.
Yeah, nice one. It was gross leases, so there was some good upside there. Good park.
What part of town?
North Fort Worth.
North Fort Worth.
So, yeah.
Hey, let's do this too.
Yeah.
Maybe we can talk about this offline, but it would be kind of neat to go through some deals too that you have that you're selling. We can maybe bring those up in some episodes. But there's some listeners out there that got some cash burning in your pockets.
So here's a good one: how to insulate your small bay flex park from a market downturn, right? And a lot of this will go off of the do's and don'ts, right? So number one, you want to diversify your tenant base, right? So having a very diverse tenant base will help you because, just like every commercial real estate sector, when some things don't do as good, right? Like maybe office isn't doing as good, flex and the self-storage are doing really well. I can tell you, years and years ago, self-storage did not do so well, especially the boat and RV parking, because when people's wallets really started getting pinched, back in 2009 and 10, people were tossing their travel trailers, tossing their boats, tossing their cars. And so those facilities did see some struggle in many areas. Offer flexible lease terms. You want to be as flexible with your tenants as possible. Make sure that you understand their business, their viability, how they're going to succeed here, what their plan to succeed here is. Number 3, offer flexible suite sizes. We went over that. You want to make sure that you offer a plethora of suite sizes that you can expand into and downsize to, because you got plenty of tenants that will come in and lease, 4,000 square feet, and then maybe later they'll need 2,000 square feet. So instead of losing them, make sure you got your building to where you can keep them. Monitor competitors constantly. You want to know what their rates are, what their free rent is, how long it takes them to lease up. You want to make sure you know your competition. Build strong tenant relationship. That's management. And you'd be surprised how many of these parks are mismanaged and have no tenant relations. We go sell parks all the time. We're walking them. Tenants are going, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of the manager for a few weeks now. We got a leaky water heater or whatever. Build good tenant relationships. Invest in amenities. We love amenities. Number 7, this is what a lot of these GPs are struggling with. Stay in front of your debt, right? You want to stay in front of it. You want to stay far in front of it, not hit it at the last minute. Keep reserves. Have a very strong marketing and branding on your park. We're a big believer in that. Build a tenant wait list. It's not hard to do. It's just bookkeeping more than anything. Stay engaged with the immediate community. One thing that I like doing, and what I don't think enough people do, is even though I don't lease Flex anymore, I still enjoy going to certain things. So I've told you about those franchise expos that come around all the time. I love going to stuff like that, right? Some cities will have certain business expos and stuff every now and then. Go to those. I love talking to cities. What I used to do when I leased Flex Space, one of the first things that I would do is I would call the city, say, hey, anybody calls y'all looking for 1,000 to 5,000 square feet, you send them my way. Nobody does that.
No.
And they get calls all the time. And sometimes they'll get calls from out-of-state business that are like, hey, we're looking in DFW, putting a satellite location there. Is there any incentives or anything, any employee incentives, anything like that? And you'd be surprised. And if you're in with, somebody over there at P&Z or somebody with the city and, you make good friends with them and say, hey, I got a great Flex building. Love for y'all to send anybody our way. And so we had a guy that actually, he leased out his project out there in Kilgore because he was such good friends with the local city manager.
I bet he was.
Yeah. Develop good tenant retention programs. We like to call that loyalty rewards, right? Referral bonuses. You'd be surprised how many tenants know other tenants. If they're a tenant for a long time, hey, doesn't hurt to get rewarded. You did Olive Garden enough, you'll get a gift card for something.
Now, give us some ideas. How would you reward a tenant?
One thing that I've seen people do is if a tenant brings in another tenant, which is kind of like a referral basically, we've seen people give that tenant that referred them a month free or something off.
That's generous.
Well, because you keep in mind, if a leasing agent brought it to you, it'd cost you more than that.
Yeah, that's true.
So, and all that does is help your park out as well, because now this tenant's got somebody that they like doing business with. Maybe that business helps out that business. Who knows? But especially when you just got it built and you're trying to fill it up. Say you just leased this park for me. I'm going to say, hey, Steven, love that you're here. Glad you're here, man. Anything you need, let me know. If you know of anybody that wants to lease a space over here, man, let us know. I'll get you a month off your rent. Help us get this place leased. So you kind of feel like you're a little bit involved as well. And so I
all
like
your
that.
Tenants, don't be coming to me about that. I'll get you an Olive Garden gift card.
Hey,
no, I'm kidding.
I'm good with that. Conduct, one thing that nobody really does anymore. We did this back when we were leasing a long time ago, is we would do tenant satisfaction surveys. Some of the parks were so bad that we quit doing them.
But some people brutal, especially if you do anonymous. Don't do it anonymous because they're gonna get nasty.
Oh yeah, well, and all the guys that work with me in the office. If I had a suggestion box that they'd fill it up with just whatever stuff.
That's why I don't have one in my office.
Oh yeah,
I don't want to hear what these guys got to say.
Oh, I know, and it would be bad suggestions
too. Say it to my face.
Yeah, like hey, don't park in my spot, stuff like that. But those are things that can help you insulate your project and just kind of keep you running as optimal as possible. Just some key simple items.
Yeah, man,
simple nuggets.
This was a thunderous episode.
I thought it was good. We spent some time on it, me and the guys, and wanted to make sure that we came with some good guns locked and loaded, and hopefully it helps a little bit of everybody out. And if you take one thing away from it, it worked.
Well, I think that's how you certainly have to look at when you're listening to episodes and getting into certain asset class. It's like one little nugget can change the projection of a particular project, right? Just one thing.
Even if it doesn't matter if it's good or bad, because I'll tell you, some of the best deals that I've made are deals that I didn't do.
Yeah.
I felt bad at the time, maybe a little bit after I regretted it, but then in the long run, I don't think I've ever really looked back at anything and said, man, that was just a terrible decision I didn't make or something like that. Maybe that Mustang, that was a bad decision. But other than that, no, it's very important to make your goal, stick to it. If it doesn't work for it, something will. And so I was talking to a guy late last night who's building a project out in South Carolina, and he's like, man, I've been looking for land for almost a year and a half. And he goes, now I found the perfect site. And we started looking at it, and man, the deal that he got, everything about it was just the perfect site. And so, good things do come, to those who wait. If you take something away from it, it was successful.
Appreciate it, man. I can't wait to keep rolling this out. Guys, send us some messages. Let us know what you want to hear. Let's talk about syndications next time.
Absolutely.
It's such a great topic right now. People need advice out there.
Well,
people need advice. There's some people in some
bad
situations right now, and they're trying to figure out how to pivot out of these deals. And of course, they're wary about the next deal, right? Like, do I stay gun shy now? Do I not move on another deal? What do I need to know for next time? Certainly one thing, too, is get to know these people. Man, most of these guys that people invest in, they've never even had lunch or a phone call with. They just literally went on a little Zoom call and were like, oh, shoot, sounds like a good deal.
Here's $50,000.
Yeah, here's $50,000 or $100,000. It's like, my Lord, if you're giving away money, just give it to me.
What was that routing number again? Yeah. I wrote it down wrong.
Yeah, we're gonna put our wiring instructions on this episode for y'all that just want to burn some cash.
Send it in.
But I mean, no, really. I mean, go have lunch with these people, get to know them.
Yeah, know their track record.
Know their track record. Go out to their sites. I invested in one deal. This was mostly a tax play. Okay, I invested in this deal due to being referred by my CPA and another capital firm. Right. Supposedly, this capital firm had all this experience and great respect and all that in industry. Well, it was a carbon syndication, and so come to find out, it's a big old fraud. I mean, the guys that's running the whole thing is facing prison time. The feds came in and just shut all the bank accounts, froze everything. But for me, it was a tax play. It was, I think at that time, it was like a 2.5 or 3.5 multiplier or something like that.
Okay.
That you could write off your K1. So even though I lost my money, and it was a good amount of money, folks. It was 6 figures for sure.
Yeah.
But it still helped my bottom line out, right? So I'm not crying about it, but I'm thinking about all the people that invest in these type of syndications that have no tax play like this, that are literally losing, potential life savings, things that could have helped their families, their grandkids, or whatever other goals they had, retirement. It's detrimental. But what I found out about the capital firm, that's what the point I actually wanted to make, was they never even went out to the site to see if equipment was out there.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
You'd be surprised.
And I'm like, this is a institutional, sophisticated capital firm, and you didn't even get in your car and drive to the site. And okay, this is syndication that they were pouring. I think maybe this particular, don't hold me to it. It was certainly somewhere north of 30, maybe 30 to 100 million.
Okay.
So it was a lot of money that was going to the syndication, and you didn't even drive up there. So I'm telling you, folks, these guys are cashing these GP checks. They're sailing on boats.
Oh, yeah.
On the shores.
A friend of mine a long time ago, this is like 15 years ago. And
with no risk, no risk of jail time. I mean, this is...
No, because, it's real estate and they're usually protected real well. But I'll tell you this, and you'll know this by the car. This was 15 years ago. A friend of mine was wanting me to invest in something with them. I was like, man, how do you know the guy? He's like, I don't know. He's got a Hummer, though. That was... That's all he knew about the guy, which, back then, if you had one of those Hummers, you're doing pretty well, apparently.
Yeah, you had to be doing well.
Do as much due diligence as possible. But yeah, let's get a syndication episode going, and we'll actually bring along some deal studies or deal stories and case studies as well on a few that we've done and been involved in, and some, what kind of makes these things tick a little more, and then we just kind of go back and forth on that.
Love it, man. Thank you, brother.
Yeah.
So fun.